everyone, Shabbat Shalom. It's Morah, Alyssa, and today for our science video, I'm going to be making challah. Now, what is one of the most important ingredients in challah? My Kita Dalit friends should know this because we did this at school as one of our science lessons. That's right, I think some of you remember, it's yeast. So what are some of the other foods that yeast is in? Yeah, that's right, bread, pizza, I think I heard pretzels, lots of food have yeast. And I'm going to teach you a little bit about yeast before we make our challah. Yeast is alive and active, but you need to add special ingredients to wake it up. It needs warm water, not too hot or you'll kill the yeast, and not too cold or it won't wake up the yeast. And it needs sugar or honey to feed the yeast and give it the energy it needs. After we prepare our yeast, we add our other ingredients and stir the dough and knead the dough. And that's, remember, when we push it really hard with our hands? And kneading is so important because it helps mix all the tiny pieces of yeast throughout the whole dough. Friends, do you know sometimes you get a little tired and you need a rest? Well, the dough is like that too. It needs to rest in a warm place so it can grow. While the dough is resting, the yeast gobbles up all the sugar and turns it into big air bubbles. And when you see the dough rise and get bigger, you know that the yeast is working and it's making the air bubbles. Yeast makes the bread light and moist and also gives it a yummy flavor. Also, yeast holds all the ingredients together to make a strong dough. So today you're going to have to bear with me as I'm trying a different challah recipe for the first time. And I'm actually combining a few bits and pieces from some different recipes. So let's give this a try. I'm gonna wash my hands, get my apron on, and then we'll get started. See you in a bit. All right, my hands are clean, I got my apron on, and I'm ready to go. Now remember, bear with me because this is a new recipe and a combination of different recipes, so I'm definitely gonna look at my paper to make sure I'm doing it right. So the first thing we're gonna do is actually preheat the oven, which I already did, for 325. And then I boiled some water and let it cool down a little to make it warm, because remember, we don't want it too hot or too cold. So I have about 3/4 of a cup of warm water, and I'm gonna pour it into this big mixing bowl. Then I'm gonna add about 2 teaspoons of sugar, and we're gonna stir it into the water. So here is 1 teaspoon, and here is 2 teaspoons. And we're just gonna stir this up a little and help the sugar dissolve. All right, who thinks they know what the next ingredient is? I'll give you a hint. We already learned a lot about it. It's very important. That's right, yeast. So here's our packet of yeast, and we're gonna sprinkle it right on top of the water. If I can open it all the way. I got it started, but maybe I should have done it all the way. Here we go. All right, Kita Dalit, remember when we made challah for science at school? And half of you got to experiment with the yeast, and half of you, we made a batch of challah that didn't have any yeast in it. Do you remember how smelly it was, those of you who worked with the yeast? Woo, that is pretty stinky. So I'm gonna stir it just a little bit, and I want you to watch and tell me if you see any observations. Whew, it smells like bread already. Now remember, when we didn't use yeast, that challah dough didn't stick together at all and did not come out very well. But with the yeast, it was yummy and delicious. So we see a few little bubbles, but we're gonna let this stand for a few minutes until we see a few more bubbles, all right? So I'll check back in with you in a couple minutes when it's ready. All right, do you see those bubbles in our mixture so far? That means our yeast is working and doing its job. So you know what, friends? I realized, silly Morah, Alyssa, I told you the first thing to do is preheat your oven, and that's what we usually do for baking. But you know what? We don't need to do that yet for our challah, because after we make our dough, it has to rise for a really long time so that yeast can do its job. So if you already preheated your oven, go ahead and stop that, and we're gonna have plenty of time to preheat the oven later. So now it's time to add some other ingredients. Like I said, this is a different recipe. I don't usually add honey to my challah, but this one calls for 1/4 cup of honey. So here's our honey and our 1/4 cup. I'm using all my muscles to squeeze this honey into the measuring cup. This is not easy. All right, that is a 1/4 cup. In it goes. And the next thing I'm gonna add is just a tablespoon of oil. Some recipes call for a little bit more than that, but this recipe doesn't even really use that much. So like I said, I'm kind of making this up as I go from a few different recipes. So we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of oil into our mix, and then I'm actually gonna put a tablespoon of oil into this little bowl because we're gonna use it later in the recipe. So here's 1, and then here I'm gonna put a little less than 1 in that bowl for later. Okay, the next thing we need is about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. So here's our salt, and here's our 1 teaspoon, but I'm just not gonna fill it up all the way. All right. And then the last thing we need right now are 2 eggs. Now this recipe didn't tell me to do this, but other recipes do. So I actually took my eggs out of the fridge ahead of time so they wouldn't be so cold. So there's 1 egg. And here's egg number 2. Now we're gonna mix up these things. We've added almost all of our ingredients, but we have not added our flour yet. So we're gonna mix this up. Make sure we break up those eggs. Start mixing it all together. So far we have water in here, sugar and yeast, and we have honey, oil, salt, and eggs. All right, it's looking pretty mixed. So now we're gonna start adding our flour. And we're gonna add 1 cup at a time so we can have a better chance of mixing it all really nicely. So we're actually using bread flour today. I bought this just for the challah. So here's our first cup. As we're making it, we're gonna use about 3½ cups of flour, but we're really gonna end up probably using another whole cup of flour when it's time for kneading it and braiding it later. So here's our first cup. And we're gonna go back to stirring that in. All right, and when we feel like it's getting pretty mixed in, I think it's time to add our second cup of flour. All right, I think it's time. Here we go. Cup of flour number 2. Here we go. Stir it up we go. We're gonna get all that challah off the sides of our bowl. Stir it into our dough mixture. Oh, I wish I had Micah and Dylan helping me today with this recipe because my muscles are starting to get tired already. This is hard work. But it's a mitzvah to make our challah for Shabbat. All right, you see our dough? It's really sticky, but it's starting to form. We're gonna add cup number 3. Here it is, number 3. All right. Oh my goodness, putting my muscles to work. You see our dough is really starting to form now. All right, so it's starting to really form our dough. Oh, you know what? It's still kind of sticky. I'm gonna add about another ½ cup of flour. Like I said, we're gonna end up adding a little more later as we're trying to knead it. If it's too sticky, you can always add a little more. And I'm gonna scoop this off the spoon. And I think it's time to start kneading a little bit with my hands. So sometimes you can knead it on a floured surface if you have a big cutting board, or if you want to put flour all over your table. For today, I'm just going to do it right in our bowl. So do you see our dough? We have a lot of flour still in the bowl, but as we knead, I'm going to try to scoop it and add the flour in. And I'm going to fold it and punch it down and use my muscles and use my fists to knead the dough. And remember, do you remember, friends, why is it so important to do a really good job kneading the dough? Does anyone remember what I said before? We're gonna make sure we get that yeast spread out all throughout the dough so it can do its job all over. See, we're really forming into a dough now. And we're gonna spread that yeast all over. And if you're doing this and it gets really, really sticky, then you might wanna add a little more flour. So I'm gonna knead this dough for about 10 minutes. So I think we're gonna pause the video because 10 minutes is a little bit of a long time to sit there and watch more Alyssa knead this dough. So I'm gonna keep kneading and I will see you in about 10 minutes. Bye. All right, I'm exhausted. I've been kneading this challah for about 10 minutes now. Do you wanna see it? Here it is, friends. It's like a big ball of dough. It's not sticky anymore. So now this recipe calls for something I've never done before for my challah. We're gonna lightly brush it. I'm gonna use a baster brush because that's what I have in my house. And we're gonna, remember we put aside a little oil in that little container? We're just gonna brush it a little with the vegetable oil, just lightly. And we're gonna cover it. And then we're gonna put it into this bowl and we're gonna cover it with a towel. And we're gonna leave it for about an hour and a half until it doubles in size. And why is it gonna double in size, my friends? Who knows? It's the key ingredient. You're right, it's the yeast. As the yeast does its job and makes those air bubbles, the challah is going to expand and get bigger, and I'm hoping it's gonna be double the size. So take note, this is how big it is right now. Who thinks it's gonna be double the size when I check back in with you? I do. So now you see it, and now you don't. It's like magic. So I'm gonna set the timer for about an hour and a half, and I'll check back in with you then. And then it will be time to braid the challah and form it. And I think we're gonna try out rolls this time. We'll see. I'll see you in a bit. Bye. Hi everyone, I'm back. Our dough has been rising for an hour and a half, and I'm really anxious to see what it looks like. Dylan here joined me because he wants to help braid the challah. So let's check it out. Wow, it definitely doubled in size, and the yeast did its job. Look at this, and it's really light and fluffy. So now we're gonna punch it down. Oh, I hear the air coming out when I do that. Wow. It's a little squishy too. All right, and now just like we do at school, I'm gonna rip the challah and I'm gonna make smaller ones. And we're gonna add a little flour so it's not sticky. We cleaned our table and we're gonna have a little flour to work with it, and we're gonna make some challah braided. What shape are you gonna do, Dylan?
Maybe like a zigzag.
Okay. So I'm gonna make one, like, I think a medium size. Do you remember what I always say at school, friends, when we're braiding challah? I always say we're gonna make 3 balls, then we're gonna roll them into 3 snakes, and then we're gonna braid them. And I have a cookie sheet here with tinfoil ready to go. And the recipe says to put it on a greased cookie sheet, but you know what? At school, we never grease our cookie sheets. We just put it right on the tinfoil, and we never have a problem with it sticking. And I can already feel, because we brushed it with the oil, that I don't think this is going to be sticky either. It's really stretchy.
It's really hard to stretch. Something to a snake.
What do you think, friends? Is my first snake long enough? We're not going for one big challah. We're just going for some little ones like we do at school.
Ooh, it's shrinking when it's moving.
It does. Can you see, friends? It's not staying as long as I stretched it out.
Is that enough?
It's up to you. What size do you want to make it? In Keita Dalid, we let our friends decide any shape they want to make their challah when they make theirs on Fridays. They don't have to braid it. I remember one time Aaron Novikov made his grandma out of challah. That was awesome. And Label likes to make a tooth with his challah. And Mia does hearts. Oh, a lot of my friends come up with interesting creations. Here's number 2. And let's go for number 3. It's really quiet in here. Are you guys still there watching us make our challah? Do, 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 do. All right, I think this is good enough for my braided challah. I'm gonna move Dylan's over. You know what? I didn't even need to add more flour because it has not been sticking to me at all. I think we'll wait and see how it tastes, but I think I kind of like this recipe. It's not looking so pretty right now, but I'm hoping it's still gonna taste delicious. So I'm connecting my 3 snakes at the top, and we're gonna go over. And this one's gonna go over.
Like cookie sizes.
Okay, this one's gonna go over, and this one's over, and this one, and this one.
I think I made my snakes too big.
That's okay, you can just change them. All right, and I'm gonna pinch the end together. What do you think, friends? Did Morah and Alyssa do okay with my challah? I'm gonna put this one on the cookie sheet, and then we're gonna get back to work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make, uh-oh, I didn't pinch it together well enough. It's coming apart. That's okay. Okay, so we're gonna finish braiding our challahs, and then we're gonna put them all on the baking sheet, and we're gonna cover them with a towel again, and we're gonna allow them to rise back bigger again. And then we'll check back in with you, but I'll give you a sneak peek. What we're gonna do after that is we're gonna brush them with a beaten egg, put some seasoning on top, and then we'll finally be ready to bake them. So I'll check back in with you, and you can see here's what it looks like now, and then we'll show you when all of ours are ready what they look like after they've waited for 30 minutes with a towel on top. All right, I'll see you in 30 minutes. All right, friends, Dylan and I are just about done braiding our challah. So I wanted to give you one more peek before we let them rise for another 30 minutes so you can see what they look like before and after. We did 3 that have the braids, and I did a few rolls here with a twist, and Dylan, this one kind of looks like a cinnamon bun that Dylan did. So I'm gonna do one more roll. I'm gonna flip it like this, and I'm gonna tuck it inside, and then I'm gonna tuck this one through on this side. And that's how I made my roll. And I'm gonna put it right here. And we're just waiting for Dylan's last one. Are you ready, Dylan? I think he's going for another cinnamon bun twist. All right, that looks good. We're gonna put that here. All right, this is what they look like. The towel is going back over them for another 30 minutes, so we'll check in then, and then we're gonna brush them with egg, and you can either put sesame seeds or poppy seeds. What we're gonna use, yummy, yummy, everything but the bagel seasoning. So we're gonna put that on, and then we'll bake them. So we'll see you in a bit. Bye. Hi, I'm back again. It's been 30 minutes, so let's check out if our challah has risen anymore. Yeah, I think they plumped up nicely. So I'm gonna take one more egg. I'm gonna crack it into this bowl. And I'm gonna quickly beat it with a fork. Get it all mixed up. And then I'm just gonna use a basting brush to brush it on our challah so they'll get a nice golden finish. And while we were waiting for these, it was finally time to preheat our oven to 325. So here we go. Here's a nice egg wash on top of them. There we go. Here's the biggest one. I'm doing that one first. And here's a little roll. Here's another little braided one. We did a few different shapes today. Here's, I think this one's my biggest roll. I've never made challah rolls like this before, twisted little knots. Here's Dylan's. It looked like a cinnamon roll, but when it expanded a little while we were waiting, it kind of opened up like a croissant. And this one too, they didn't stay together, but that's okay. I bet you they're still gonna taste really yummy anyway. And that's another one of my rolls. And here's my last braided one. All right, what do you think, friends? Did I miss any spots? I don't know, I think I got them all pretty well. Get a few little nooks and crannies that I left off the first time. All right, we don't wanna cover them in egg too much, just a light washing so they'll hopefully turn golden brown. And now I'm gonna sprinkle that everything but the bagel seasoning because we don't have any sesame seeds in my house right now. We don't have any poppy seeds, but you know what? We all like this, so I think we're gonna try this on our challah this week. So we're gonna sprinkle it all over. And because of the egg, the seasoning should stick right on. What do you think? Should I cover them all? Should I leave some plain? I think I'm going for all of them this time. All right, so there's our challah. We're gonna put it in the oven, which we preheated to 325. And we're gonna cook it for 25 to 30 minutes. And then we'll keep checking on it to make sure in case it's done early. Sometimes when we make smaller ones, they're done a little quicker, and sometimes the bigger ones take a little longer, but about 25 to 30. So I'll see you when they come out of the oven. Bye. Hi friends, I'm back. It's been about 28 or so minutes, and here is our challah fresh from the oven. It smells so yummy. So that is Morah Alyssa's video on making challah. What do you think, friends? Does it look delicious? I think so. I can't wait to taste it later when we say the prayers. Shabbat shalom to all of you. Miss you.